Okay.
Would you like me to sit about here?
That's good, yeah.
Is that close enough?
Maybe a little bit closer, if you...
Well,
Shall I help to move your...
yeah, that's it. Is that all right?
That's great. Yes, very good.
Good.
Okay.
Do you want?
No, thank you. No, that.
Right.
Okay, so today we're talking about Greece. Is it Dad who's starting? Or?
Dad.
Yes. So Dad, yes.
Well, I was 5 years in the personnel department of the Foreign Office and was going to be promoted to be a counsellor. Yeah, I was the first secretary in the department doing recruitment and hiring and firing in the second bit. And then I desperate to go abroad because we were broke, remember?
We were.
5 years, 5 years in London. I got an enormous overdraft in that day.
That's right. We needed to go abroad.
To get some money back.
You were living in Malpath Cottage for that time?
Yes, we must have been.
Yes, we were.
72.
Yes, we were, because we bought Applebee's from Greece.
Yes, that's right. So we did. That's right.
So I think I was given a choice. And being in the personnel department, I was able to talk to the ones who posted. And they gave me a choice. It was Canberra, or Ankara, or Athens. And I thought, well, I've been a classical scholar until I was 23. I knew ancient Greek. I think Greece would be the place to go to. The only thing was that the post that was vacant was commercial counsellor. Now, you may not think that your father's very much good at commercial work, but actually I did very well as a commercial counsellor in Greece, said he pompously. Because we were there when the colonels were in charge, the 7 colonels, Papadopoulos, Makaresos and Patakos, Baker's man, that one.
Yeah.
And I had a totally different view from the political people in the embassy. Nice embassy in Queen Vasilissis Sophia's, Queen Sophia Street, right in the centre of Athens. Robin Hooper was our ambassador. We had John Paul Jones, who had formerly been married to who later became Anne Paladin. And he was a terrible husband, a terrible head of chancery. He made life hell for everybody.
But the Greeks loved him.
The Greeks loved him because
he was exactly what they thought an English gentleman
he was
should
a
be
snob,
like.
terribly well bred, well mannered,
Right.
spoke excellent Greek, and
Very cultured.
The intelligentsia in Athens peeweed to the embassy the whole time, complaining about the colonels, complaining about the lack of democracy, getting pats on the shoulders from Pearl Jones and Robin Hooper. But I was trying to sell goods to Greece and had a marvellous team of 14, half British, half Greek, and the 3 Greeks were a Romanian Greek and Southern Greek and somebody else. Excellent British staff. Lomax was superb as the number 2. Wonderful secretary, remember, who was...
No, I don't remember that name.
But, you know, we were a wonderful little team. And I spent my time going to Piraeus and talking to the ship owners. And you would find them sitting in their offices, in their braces, sleeves up, smoking a fag. I mean, it was just ordinary life. These were very rich millionaires running shipping. Levos, Livanos, all these others. I never saw Nearchos. I never did deal with Onassis. I dealt with all the hard-working Greek ship owners. And I once said to one of them, how do you become a millionaire, more or less? He said, well, when you're young, you borrow money from the bank, mortgaging the buying of a very small vessel. And then you start trading with that vessel from all the ports around the Mediterranean, and make enough money to pay back the mortgage. Then you buy another one, and then another one. You just build it up from a very small beginning to entrepreneurship. And I said, but you know, how do you organize the trade, you see? That's simple, he said. You keep an eye on the whole world. You see where the grain is grown, where the oil comes from, where the minerals come from. You look at all the trade routes, where the shipping goes, and you see where's the best place to be, to take from A to B, whatever the mineral is that has to go. So you keep a flexible mind at the beginning, and you pick up the trade where you spot it by thinking with your head. And gradually, you become a millionaire. So I thought that was fun. And going to the Pyrenees was always fun because it ate so well.
And they were supporters of the regime, or
didn't give a damn about it. My personal view was this: they had stopped corruption. They had sent a lot of people to jail who were troublemakers, from their point of view. The common people lived in peace. They got the standard of living raised all the time, and their 7 years were calm and good for Greece itself. But Europe, you see, was giving them sanctions for their breaking democracy and all that.
And the intellectuals were very unhappy.
And the intellectuals...
The Catholic society was sort of ruined.
Oh dear, you know, because the police were watching them to see what they were up
and
to.
And listening to what they were saying, too.
Yes, I do, yeah. So it was a terribly nice experience. I did enjoy it very much. When I'd been there for 8 months and was learning and visited the Papadopoulos, Makaresos. I saw them all, talked to them, introduced myself. After 8 months, I was called in by Robin Hooper, who said, the Foreign Office just sent me a telegram wanting to post you. And I said, but I've only just begun here. I've only been here 8 months. I'm just getting to know the ropes. Well, they said, there's a chap called Murray Mackley who's in Hong Kong who wants a Chinese-speaking political advisor. He's picked you and he wants you to go at once. And so I said, well, to Robin Hooper, look, if I went now, I think my reputation would be dead gone in this country. It's that have been removed by the forces of authority in Britain for not being any good. And I'd rather go with a good reputation when I left. Do you think you could say that I'm indispensable? He said, yes, of course I could.
Lying in his teeth.
Lying in his teeth. So he sent a message back to the Foreign Office saying, I cannot spare this excellent commercial counsellor. It will leave a gap in the embassy which will be very hard to refill. And so eventually the Foreign Office gave in and they told Murray to stay with the one he had. And that's why immediately I finished my posting in Greece, 2.5 years later, I'd straight to Hong Kong. And that was the time we had the trouble with Applebee's, because between going...
Keep to the point.
Yeah, right. Anyway, and during that time, I went twice to Mount Athos.
Well, it was 3 times.
No, I went the third time was in 1983, when I'd been rather disappointed at being posted to Indonesia. I couldn't think what on earth I knew about Indonesia, and was very, very grief-stricken. So to console myself, I went for my birthday, my 52nd birthday, in 1983 to Mount Athos, to console myself, because it was a Spartan, all-male living there, hard work, so 3 visits.
Explain what Mount Athos is.
Well, Mount Athos, you know the Halkidiki in Greece, 3 prongs stick out on the right-hand side. If you look at the map, that's the right-hand one at the end. At the end of it is a mountain, Athos, which is over 6,000 feet high, over 2,200 meters high. Enormous mountain. And
rises sheer from the sea.
Sheer from the sea, just whoosh, like that. And the coast round about it is terribly wild. In the days of the Persian Wars, King Xerxes lost a whole fleet, a whole army and a whole fleet. They hit a storm trying to get round the bottom of Mount Athos to go to Athens, and were all totally destroyed by the bad weather. And I had that the first time I was there with Colonel Harry Baxter, the one who had a black eye patch. He was the military attaché in Greece, and he and I went off to be pilgrims in Mount Athos. And the thing was, you take the train or the bus to Ouranopolis, then you go by ferry to halfway down the peninsula. You then have to go up a mountain to Carius at the top to get the permit to stay there, a 4-day permit to visit the monasteries. There are about 20 monasteries, all from Byzantine times. And we visited, you walk from monastery to monastery, about 15 miles a day.
Are there no cars or something?
No cars, no females allowed. Come to that later, though. And the pilgrims go like Canterbury pilgrims. You walk with a group of people, Greeks and Latins and Americans, Russians, because every Orthodox country has got a monastery in Mount Athos. The Russians have one, the Yugoslavs had one, the Romanians had one, the Serbs had one, and so on, and each had their own customs, but they were all Greek Orthodox. Shall I stop there?
No, that's good. Sorry, it was the sheep buying. I thought there was some sort of thing coming from the camera. But it's actually the sheep outside, so that's fine. No, keep going. That's fine.
Well, the first when you arrive at the monastery, you report to the main gate, and they give you first of all a glass of ouzo to refresh you after your journey, a spoonful of jam to restore your calories, and a glass of water. And then you're invited to go in, and then you're fed and you're given the dormitory to sleep in, which is absolutely primitive. And the food, described later in 1983 by my friend Dudley Kirk as the holy tripes. They were a bowl of awful soup and a bit of bread, and you never got any meat. There were tripes or something, so you had to get the food down pretty quickly, and no drink at all, except a glass of ouzo at the door. And then
What did you sleep in?
You slept in bed with sheets, and it was nice hot always. Yeah. And all the other pilgrims round about, God knows who was there, dirty men, old men, all men. And the first visit I was there, I was taken apart by a man with a stovepipe black hat and a black gown, one of the monks. And he sat me down and we spoke in Greek, because I was learning a bit of Demotic Greek. He told me that the motor car was the work of the devil, after koniton is the word for motor car. And he sat in the well pontificating about the evils of motor cars. And I nodded and agreed, yes, very, very wise. That's why we have to go on foot here. Yes, it is. Good for you, he said. The second time I was there was with John Barrett. Again, I think in the 70s, because he came out with his family to visit us, and I took him to Mount Athos. Now, being with the embassy, it was much easier to get the permits to go in. You had to get a passport and a permit and all the rest. It was an awful lot of bureaucracy. And you had to take a boat from Ouranopolis to Daphne to go to Carius to get your bit of paper. So that was difficult. Well, we had quite a good time. We stayed in Iveron and went through the whole rigmarole. It's terribly good. It's like going on a retreat. You go to Vespers, you visit the services, it's Greek Orthodox. The third time, in '83, I went with Dudley Quirk, Piers Quirk, his son, Matthew Quirk, and me, the four of us. We went by boat. We flew to Athens, got into a boat at Piraeus, a little small yacht, and steamed across the sea. We visited Rupert Brooke's grave on the way. We saw dolphins. We went straight to Daphne. We went to Ouranopolis first because Matthew was coming from Greece and was waiting at Ouranopolis, so he took on board and then took the boat to Daphne. And because I'd been in Athens beforehand and talked to the people on guard, I got my passports and everything. No problem from the embassy in Athens. And they were later very good getting our trips back to London with the bookings and all that. We did all that through the embassy, so it was very great. And from Daphne, we did not have to go to carriers because the policeman there was ready with our thing. And we saw a crowd of people from Cyprus, I think, students, who were waiting for a rickety bus. They were all going to get crammed onto the bus and go this terrible journey up the mountains. And so we just said goodbye to them and went round the mountains all the way. So we visited all sorts of monasteries on the way.
Tell about the standing up in the boat with a towel.
Well, that's a bit, you see, well, we realised that after 4 days we had to quit again. And we had lots of adventures, meeting priests and monks. And always the abbot took us up to his home and he looked at all the crucibles and all the palimpsests, all the wonderful libraries with the documents going back 1,000 years. We went to the Megasti Lavra the first time down, where we saw all the bones of all the monks for 1,000 years. They bury the bone, the corpse, take them up, wash the bones, dissect them, put the heads in one place, the bones in an ossuary, and then we watched. They just kept there for 1,000 years. Amazing stuff. But on the last day, going back to 83, the weather was terrible. When we went round the bottom of the Mount Athos, God, the boat was all over the shop. And we couldn't land at 2 of the monasteries because the weather was so rough. The jetties were so small. So we went on to Daphne and thought, well, there's one more we could do when our 4 days have run out, and that is the Russian monastery of St. Panteleimon. Rusiko is called. So when we arrived and the weather was rough, we steered into the jetty. A monk came down, saw us, and shrieked, threw his hands there, turned around and ran back to the monastery. And we later found out, I think one of us had been with a towel around the waist and bare top, which he thought was a skirt. And then he saw the red duster, the red ensign flying from the back of the little boat, he thought was a skirt. So he thought there was a crowd of women were going to invade. So he ran. And so we stopped the tent, went aboard. Now we thought there was nobody there, but there were 18 monks. At one time it housed 1,000 cells in this monastery there. And the Russians send money to it all the time from Istanbul. And they piecemeal it, they build up a treasury in Istanbul, which was Constantinople, and then feed it down to the monastery. All during the communist regime, they were feeding this Orthodox monastery and financing it. So that's why there were 18 people left in a 1,000-room dwelling. And eventually, when I went, we all peeled off and looked at various bits of money, and I met Father Job. And Job was an American. He looked like Billy Bunter. He was very stout and fat with a tonsure, and he spoke perfect English because he was an American from Ohio. And I said, what are you doing here if you're an American from Ohio? He said, well, my parents were half Ukrainian, and when I was in America I thought I wanted to become a priest. So I went to Leningrad, to a seminary there for 3 years and learned Greek Orthodox. I said, in the times of Stalin, no, times of Brezhnev. Oh yes. It was going all the time, training Orthodox priests in communist Russia. And then I had a marvelous time with him. And then he said, well, would you like to see one of our chapels? And I said, how many have you got? It was 36. 36 chapels, all with wonderful icons, all wonderful chapels. And we talked all about his time in Russia. He said after 3 years in Leningrad, he spoke perfect Russian, perfect Greek, and he used to wander around Russia. And when he was in the middle of Russia, he'd come across a KGB chap and said, what are you doing here? And he'd produce his authority and his ticket and passed on. He was wandering all over Russia in Brezhnev's time. So eventually he took me to the chapel, the big one of St. Pantaleimon, the biggest one was 36. And the first thing I saw was a huge icon on the wall, in the centre of which was the saint's face in the Orthodox icon. And all round it was a series of pictures. They all looked absolutely horrible. There was a chap being crushed by stones, a chap being burnt at the stake, a chap being cut by a saw. And I said, what are the... Oh, these are the 7 martyrdoms of St. Pantaleimon. 7? Oh, yes, yes. And then, tongue-in-cheek, I said, well, how did they finally get him? Oh, decapitation. It's absolutely fine. And they said, you've got his head in the basement. Would you like to come and see it? And I said, no thank you. And so that was a lot, but it was incredible. I mean,
So no cars, no women.
No cars.
But you said there was a bus. You mentioned a bus.
No.
Was that outside?
No, the buses only went from Daphne to Carriers and back again. It took people to the administrative capital.
Yes, I
and
see.
then they were on their own. They had to get round by foot or donkey if they were lucky.
So did you feel that you had travelled into a different dimensional
different
space?
era.
1,000 years ago, it felt like. Still going on now. And there was one place now we were
What
in.
about the story of the one-legged?
Yes, well, that was in Vatopedi, the first monastery we went to. We were welcomed hospitably by a Yugoslav one. Mm-hmm. And the abbot was very kind, and then this young Lucas, Father Lucas, took it to his cell, and there was a cage with a canary in it. And to make conversation in Greek, I said, what's the name of that bird? He said, it's a monopodos. And of course a monopod has one leg. He was saying to me, it's a one-legged canary. I was asking what's he called, and they would call him Fred. It was a Monty Python in making, you know. What is he called? He's a monopod. Oh, yes. And at that point, Piers found an old sword, which they said came from the Wars of Independence, but we looked and saw it was not. It was a modern sort of stuff. But he started fencing with Father Lucas. They made mock fencing in the cell. It was weird, absolutely weird. Piers will remember that vividly. But you know, that was fun. And
was it calming? I mean, did you feel
after
spiritually changed?
Having been to Assos in '83, I said I can face anything the foreigners throws at me. And as it happened, Indonesia was our most favourite place, a really lovely place. 4 years was really good, wasn't it?
It was lovely, absolutely lovely. We were happier there than any of the other ones.
But who is Mr. Gravy?
Oh, well now, yes, I want to talk about Mr. Gravy. You talked about the three-pronged
Halkidiki.
And whereas on the far one was where there was Mount Athos, the right-hand one, or was it the middle one?
No, the right-hand one has Thessaloniki in it.
Oh, yes,
Thessalonica
that's right.
is on the first one, then Posidi is the second one, and then Assos is the third one.
Well, Mr. Gravy, who I'll explain about in a moment, he was building himself a family home, a sort of holiday home. Now, Mr. Gravy actually his name was Steve Grady, and we met him because he was the man in charge of all the Commonwealth war graves. That's right. And we had met him earlier when we went to Gallipoli, which is a different story. But he was an awfully nice man, and when he heard that Alan was going to go to Mount Athos with John Barrett. The Barretts, by the way, were out in Greece.
No, that second visit.
Second visit, and they had travelled all the way out from Britain with their children in a dormobile. And so John was going to Mount Athos. So Steve Grady said very kindly, well, would your friends and children, that was Sheila and the 4 boys, the 4 children, like to actually come and just sort of use this beach, my bit of the beach, which is just
on the first leg.
yes, well, not the first, the one that actually is a holiday sort of set.
The second one.
Yes, the second one. Yeah. So we had a lovely time there, waiting, and we took, in fact, Alan and John to the border and saw them into the land of the men, as it were, and then we retreated, thankfully, to the beach with the children and things. And we slept, the house was only half built, as the Greeks build houses, which is they always start with a sort of bottom, and they always have this metal sticking up to show that they haven't finished it, and therefore they don't need to pay any taxes and things. So it was very hot, and so we slept on the bare concrete floor, which, because it hadn't been finished. And I remember Sheila telling me in the morning that actually she had noticed that in fact that it was either rats or mice that actually ran over her body while she was sleeping on the floor. Nobody else had woken up, but I think, poor love, she did. But anyway, Mr. Gravy was somebody that we had known earlier, and he realised that we were very short of cash, and had also offered us the gardener's hut on Crete. He was in charge of the war graves down there as well, and he said, well, you could borrow the gardener's hut, rest hut if you like. And
because there's a huge crematorium of the dead, Allied dead, in Sula,
in Crete.
Sula Bay in the right-hand bit of Greece.
And we had a hilarious holiday there. I don't know if John will remember that, but maybe.
No, I do. It was very fun. Yeah.
Oh yes. The thing was that it was absolutely minimal. We went with the children and with our sort of nanny, and there were all sorts of chickens running about, which Alexander absolutely loved. And he is the one who called our very kind host, who wasn't there, Mr. Gravy, because he was in charge of graves, of all the graves and things. But we had a hilarious time there. When we first went in, there were only 2 bedrooms, so all the children had to sleep in one room, and Alan and I were in the other. And our bedroom consisted only of a sort of a table with a straw mattress, and no furniture at all otherwise. There was one nail hammered into the wall, and there was an enormous box, a tea chest box of that size, covered with a sacking. And we thought, well, you know, we could use this to put our things in, empty our suitcase and things, until we lifted off the sacking and looked in. Oh dear. It was absolutely filled with snails and thyme or some herb, which was obviously on which they were feeding. It was filled with snails all the way up the sides, all round by the bottoms. We thought, not a place for our clothes, thank you very much. So we quickly put the sacking back on and whipped it out, put it outside. And we had actually a tremendous, I suppose, the inside of a week there, which was lovely. And the Greeks were so kind to us.
Oh,
and we were so grateful to Mr. Gravy for actually allowing us, somewhere to stay. And the only person who was a little bit less enthusiastic about the holiday, so Alexander loved it because it was Mr. Gravy, but we had, I can't remember her name, but we had our sort of nanny mother's help with us.
Yes,
and the only place where she could sleep was actually in the kitchen. There was a sort of bed, and so she was sleeping there. But nobody had thought to tell the big, burly Cretan gardeners that in fact somebody else was using their rest house. And in the morning, when they opened the door and burst in, she sat up shrieking and trying to cover herself with what little bedclothes there were. Because there was this very buxom, handsome girl, sleeping in their bed and things, and they were absolutely astonished. What was happening?
What's this girl doing? Hello.
So she wasn't quite so happy, but the rest of us had a really good time with Mr. Gravy, and we've been in touch with him ever since. And he's taken to painting, and he sends us his
He goes to Mount Athos regularly, and we've got lots of paintings.
Into the house that is now finished.
No, but he's also got paintings of lots of the monasteries.
Yes.
Of the 20 monasteries, all different, all high up, and all. Some so difficult in the bad weather we simply couldn't get up there. We couldn't go. We just had to pass.
One of them was perched right on the top of the cliff that went straight down to the sea, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it's an amazing place. Greece was lovely, I must say. We enjoyed it very much.
We did see some other monasteries in Meteora, in the centre of Greece, where the sides of the cliff are so steep that they bring the goods up with a basket and a string.
And people too.
The people sit in the basket and they're hauled up.
It means that they're very inaccessible, the monasteries, which is good.
Well, I think it must have been very important during the time of the Ottoman Turks, when Greece was occupied, and the Greek Orthodox people would have been at risk. So they were much safer in the top of the monasteries in Meteora with the Turks around.
What was the name of the people who lived on Evia?
Noah Baker.
Yes, who got on very well with dictators and then had a lot of trouble afterwards.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, absolutely right. Well, that's another story. Evia was just splendid.
Let's keep that for the next time. But that's great. Let's stop at that.